Welcome. This video is about my visit to Fort Christanna and a little bit about the history of the fort. To get to Fort Christanna, it is just off Route 46 in Brunswick County. There is a highway marker on Route 46, but you can't see the fort from there. I suggest you go to the Brunswick County Byways Visitor Center before you visit the fort. At this center, they have some very interesting displays of the history of Brunswick County and Fort Christanna. They have a picture of Fort Christanna at the Visitor Center, which gives you a good idea what the fort looked like. But my favorite display was a 3D model of the fort, which had every building labeled. But now, let's go visit the fort. All right, I'm here at Fort Christanna. This fort was named by Governor Spotswood for his religion and his queen in 1714. This monument was put up by the colonial Danes, and they put a cannon here. Let's go take a closer look at this cannon. I don't see any marks on the cannon. So I can't tell when it was made, but it looks like there's a mark that says 1858 on the end of the barrel. So this is clearly not a time period correct cannon. All right. What they've done here is they've marked out the perimeter of the fort, and we're going to walk the perimeter, and I'll talk a little bit about the fort. Now, this fort, according to the marker, was built in August of 1714. At the time, this was the frontier of Virginia. There wasn't much else to the west of this. Okay, right now I'm standing in one of the 5 corners of the fort. This is where they would have had a palisade house and a cannon to help defend the fort. The fort was essentially set up here as a trading post with the Indians, also to keep good relations with them. Now I'll start walking the perimeter, and you'll kind of get an idea of how large this fort is. This fort was only used by the English, or the colonial Americans, until 1722. So the fort only had a lifespan of about 8 years. That doesn't sound like very long, but the frontier was moving quickly to the west, and they had, I guess, accomplished their goals here. They had set up an Indian school at the fort. They had established trade with the people here. There were actually 5 Indian tribes that participated in activities at the fort. You see, when the people came from Europe, disease and other things had pretty much decimated the numbers of the Indians because they had no immunity to these diseases. Okay, now we've reached another corner of the fort. So this gives you an idea of how long it takes to walk the perimeter of the fort. So let me turn the camera around and we'll look at it going the other way. All right. Now you can see in front of me is another one of the quarter markers. What they did is they put a square of wood and filled it with gravel. And then they put like stone benches around so that you can sit on them with dedications to who helped pay for these markers. It's nice back here. You can hear the birds. All right, this is now the third corner, and we're going to turn and move towards the fourth corner of the fort. They actually did archaeology in the area, and they found where the palisade was, and that's how they laid out this path and the markers for each corner. So it's nice to know that this was the actual site. Here we are at the fourth corner. Now we'll make the turn. And we're passing what they call the learning circle, where they have interpretive programs for children and other groups that have arranged for an event here. We're coming up on the fifth corner now. This one is easiest for you to see how they're laid out. Now we'll make the turn and head for the corner that we started at. Passing the monument with the cannon. And now we can look down the path that we went down originally. All right, now we've walked the perimeter of the fort. That kind of gives you the idea of how big this fort was. That's a rather large palisade to build. And inside this palisade, they had quite a few buildings. So this was no small effort to build this fort. And they said on the markers here that the Native Americans continued to use the fort years after the English had abandoned it. So I hope that gives you a pretty good idea about what you're going to see at Fort Christanna, or Christanna. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. But this is quite a fort for the time period. That would have taken a lot of effort to build that thing. Now, when you come here, you'll be surprised that the only way to get here is down a road that is a pure gravel road. So let's go out to the road and take a little walk down the road. And as you can see behind me, this is the road you'd come in on. It's pretty primitive. I don't think I'd want to come down here when it's wet and muddy. But it wasn't bad today. The road was kind of dry and we kicked up a lot of dirt. But when you come to the fort, you travel for a while down this dirt road, and you will have to pay attention. You will see the stones that they have over there that protect the site, I guess, so nobody can drive up on it. And then you have to watch for the sign, and then you can pull into the parking lot. Now there's a nice sign here at the fort, and there's lots of markers around the place that let you know the history of the fort. And if you want more information, you can also go to the visitor center that is on the main road before you turned onto the gravel road, just about a mile or so up the road. But definitely do take the time to read all of the different markers here. They're very informative. And I'd never heard of this place until just a few weeks ago when I was planning this trip to Brunswick County to do some research on my family genealogy. And that's when I came across Fort Christanna. It was on the map. And I decided I'd check it out. And I'm glad I did, because this is quite a place. Even though there's not a whole lot to see here, at least you get an idea of the trail. Okay, I'm standing in one of the back corners of the fort, and it looks like this might be a trail. I'm going to go down it and see if it'll take me down to the river. I can see the river now. right. I've made my way down to the river. It's not a very wide river. It's got a steady current, but not real fast. It's easy to see why they chose this location, because rivers were the transportation system of the day. It's also how you found your way around. You could follow the rivers. By locating the fort on a river, you'd obviously know how to find it. Also, goods and services that the Indians would want to trade could come down the river. If you follow the river upstream, you're going further west into the frontier of Virginia. Go downstream, heading back towards civilization. Of course, there was nothing out here but the Native Americans at the time the fort was built, but it wasn't long after that that English settlers moved beyond this point. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the visit to Fort Christanna, and I hope you'll join me again for another video. Until then, I have to say goodbye.